Learn how to take your DNA cousin matches and group them strategically in a color-coded tree so that you can find the answers to the research questions that you have and do this over and over again. Hi, my name is Connie Knox. I am a lifelong genealogist here to help you go further faster and factually with your family history research. Now we're going to take these cousin matches and we're going to learn how to color code the tree. We're going to learn how to group those cousin matches in the specific branch that you are researching. All right, so there is a handout for this for the channel members. That's the information access level channel members. That has the step-by-step instructions and that has the worksheets in it. So if you want to learn more about that, we'll talk about that toward the end of the show. Okay, I'm super excited to tell you about this because what's going to happen here, especially if you've never really tried grouping your DNA cousins before, this is going to be a game changer. You may be new to this and you just aren't really familiar with how this works, but take a look at it like this. So we have all of these DNA cousins and maybe we don't understand how they interact with our family. We know we're genetically related, but we know nothing about them. Well, the whole process here, this is going to take our DNA cousins, it's going to focus our research question down to the line in which we are researching, and it will then group our DNA cousins together, and the little red guy in the middle is you, right? So then you'll understand how everybody is connected with you. So if we take a look at Ancestry, for those who are new and have not done this before, you go to the DNA tab on Ancestry and you click on DNA matches, and then the screen here on the right kind of gives you a brief look at what your match list would look like. Well, the problem is we have a ton of matches, right? Here's a quick look at all of my matches. Right? I did a screen grab of every screen and threw it on the screen just to give you an idea of how many matches I have at Ancestry. Okay? Well, how do we whittle this down? How do we make it to where we need to get to just the ones that are going to answer our genealogical question? And that is the whole mission of doing this grouping with DNA cousin matches. And so we're going to talk about that more here in a moment. But take this giant list for a moment. And think of it this way, if we are representing those DNA cousin matches with a bunch of little dots, we don't know where they fit in our family, and we need to figure that out. So what if we could group those cousin matches into the 4 grandparents that we have and separate out those cousin matches so that we now have a little bit more manageable? Well, we could really take that one step further and take that into the 8 great-grandparents that we have if we have the DNA connections to do so. So how do we do that? We're going to do that over at Ancestry, and we're going to try and focus our research down to just the area that we are researching. So now we're getting it down, whittled down a little bit more. Then we would prioritize those cousin matches to where we're now getting down to just a focused branch of people that we are working on, okay? So let's take a look at my family tree for a moment. And with that, we need to kind of do this methodically. Well, if we kind of set this up from the beginning with the color code scheme that we want and kind of think of it strategically in advance as to what it is that we want to do, what we could then do is take our groupings and create, especially if you don't know who these people are, you could group your father's side from your mother's side, okay? And we could just start there and separate out the 2 sides. So if you have already tested your parents, then that you have a little bit of an advantage over most of us who don't have our parents tested, okay? Because it'll show you your father's side from your mother's side. So you're already a little bit ahead of the game, but it's not that hard to figure out usually. So we could also group by our grandparents' parents, right? So we could create 4 groups. We could create 8 groups. It all depends on how you want to do this. This is the way I like to do it. And then we could even color code each one of them to kind of match what's going on there at Ancestry. So if we take that focused branch and we color code and we group them together, we can get right to researching just those, in this case, 8 dots, 8 cousin matches, and see what we can find. And there's a lot more to find out of those 8. Okay, so then what we can do is we can take those cousin matches and we can color code those groups, and maybe it would look something like this, but we still really haven't identified who those cousin matches are. So let's take a look at the tree for a minute. If we just take the tree and color code it, so we can kind of get an idea of how we're going to color code this going forward. You can kind of create your own little master sheet like this. I will give you a blank and I will give you this for the channel members. That'll be in your handout. You can get this chart and then you can write on it or do whatever rocks your world. You don't have to use these colors either. You could use other colors. So let's take a look at my cousin for a second. And this would be when I drill in from one of the cousins on the cousin match page. Okay, here's my cousin Carol. Now I know this is where we start doing the grouping, right? I know that Carol is a direct descendant from my Madsen and Jensen great grandparents. You can kind of see Herman Madsen there in the lower left corner. He's my great grandfather, and he married a woman named Frances Johnson, and together, actually her name in Denmark was Jensen, so that's why I called it the Madsen-Jensen line. And you can see that right here. So we would check this, and that gives her this purple group right here. You can add new groups by clicking on the Create Custom Group, and with that strategy in mind as to what color you're going to give what part of the tree, you could then start color coding them. So now I've taken Carol here, who is my best Madsen-Jensen cousin. She's the closest one that I know to be from that family. Now I can color code her, and then I can go and on to the next step. We're going to take a look at the steps for DNA matches. So the first thing we're going to do is decide those colors. We're going to decide the best known match, and as you just saw, I did that with Carol, okay? And I gave Carol a specific color. Then we're going to click on the shared matches for that particular ancestor. In this case, it would be Carol. And we're going to look at the shared matches. What that means is that Carol and I, it's kind of like, what if we could look at just the DNA matches that Carol and I have in common? Because if that's the case, then we know that all of those shared matches descend from the same Madsen-Jensen couple, right? So now what we can do is when we click on that shared matches, and I'll repeat this step here in just a minute, but when we do that, we now know that all of those people in that list, because we filtered it down to just Carol, me, and all those who share with us DNA, we now know that they descend, whether we know their tree or not, whether we understand how they relate, we know that they descend from this couple. So we can then give them the same color as that I gave Carol a few minutes ago. So then we can filter the group even further and do some research in those trees for clues to help us with our research. And we can research the descendants. So then what we could do from those DNA matches, we can go up and back and forth. We can take all the siblings from the Madsen-Jensen couple, and we can go sideways and then research down to present day people and find more DNA cousins who may have tested. Let's take a look at the tree chart again. Now I've labeled the tree chart. I can give this to you too in the handout, but you can decide what colors you want to use. I just laid this out because I thought it was cool. I realize that some of the font is hard to see here because of the dark colors, but we can then narrow our focus down, and you can continue to add colors as you discover more. For example, let's pretend for a moment that you don't understand, you don't know any of these guys here. You only know these guys. As you discover the next set of grandparents, in this case, this pink area here is the great grandparents. As you discover DNA cousins that descend from this couple, then you would give them a pink color. And as you discover, say, DNA cousins from this orange colored couple down here, then you would give that DNA cousin an orange color. And so now you're kind of getting an idea how this works. All right, so now let's really put this into practice. We're in the full DNA match list here. I'm going to scroll down, and here is a first cousin on my Booth and Simmons line. And so we're going to take a look at this match. And when we get to this line, you can see this is the Booth and Simmons line. And in her tree, she's showing the same ancestors. But at first, what I want to tell you to do is just start slow with the dots, right? Here, I've actually given her 3 dots. So if we go up here to edit the groups, we can kind of see a little bit better what we're talking about. So we've got the Booth Simmons, which is this couple right here. This is the most recent common ancestor, okay? And so there's Booth Simmons. And then if you can see over here, we've got Booth Smith that she would also descend from. So I've given her a pink dot. And then she also descends from the Simmons. In her case, she wrote Cass here. There's a couple different spellings for this, but I labeled it as Simmons Coss. Okay, so now she could have 3 dots. In fact, I could keep going with the colors, right? But for now, I'm going to stop because I don't want to get crazy overwhelming. Okay, for the sake of ease, don't get confused by this. I have added a second window underneath this window. It is the same window, one on top of the other, just so that you could see where I'm at. I'm in shared matches, and these are the shared matches that I have with this cousin. All of these cousins here have the same someone in that same group, that side of the family, with the Booth and Simmons side of the family. So what we can do then is, if we are focused on looking for a second great grandparent, then we are looking for a third cousin that may be on that side of the family. How do I know that? A second great grandparent, that would be a great great grandparent. We're counting the G's. Great great grandparent. That's 3 G's, that's a third cousin. Okay? That's a quick and dirty way to remember it. And so we could be looking in the anywhere from this second to third cousin bucket to look at their trees to see if they are in this line of the family that we are researching. Just know that an unlinked tree doesn't mean that they don't have a tree. You can click through to it, and more than likely they have a tree. They just haven't linked it to their DNA. So if you see this, it means there's a tree there. There may only be one person in their tree, but there's a tree there, and they just haven't linked it to the DNA, so you could go look at that tree. And so here we've got one that's got a common ancestor. So let's look at this tree, and he's got a lot of people in it, so this is promising. Okay, so this is interesting. Now I'm looking at a cousin. Now remember, I got it from the other cousin that we knew was on the Booth Simmons side of the family. But now this cousin, JH here, we know by looking at this that he comes from the Simmons Dunbar group. Let me show you the family tree again. Here is the Simmons Dunbar line. This is out here in the 2 times great grandparent section. We can then mark this cousin. We can add this cousin to a group that's actually descending from this, because this is the most recent common ancestor, George Washington Simmons and Dunbar. And that's these guys right here. Well, do I have a Simmons Dunbar? Let's go look. Simmons Dunbar? No, I don't. So I add Simmons Dunbar. Looking at my color coding system, that's this orange color. So I will give them this orange color. But since I don't have a Simmons Dunbar group, I will add it, and I will call it Simmons Dunbar. And I will create that orange color, this color. And now Simmons Dunbar, I need to click on it to make sure that they've been added to it. Now I know that this cousin JH is a descendant from the Simmons Dunbar line. If that's my focus group that I'm trying to research, and maybe I'm trying to research these guys, and I don't have them in my tree, first of all, here's clues, but I can also look at the shared matches that I have with just JH. And now I can narrow more cousins. Now they start getting out there, but I can get to more cousins that have probably a similar line. Now, not everyone in that list will have the exact same grandparents, but here's another situation where I clicked on the shared matches from JH, and I discovered this cousin match who also descends from the Simmons Dunbar line, so I want to add her to the Simmons Dunbar line. Now, going all the way back to my DNA matches and making sure that everything is unfiltered, I can then search on the groups, and I can come down to the Simmons Dunbar line if that's what I'm searching, and click on that, hit apply, and now I have a short list of the 2 that I have marked. Remember, there could be more, but I've only marked 2 of them as being from this line. But now I can really do some research. Both of these guys have in-depth trees. I could look through their trees for clues, for records. Remember, you always want to verify. Don't take it as that they have their trees right. I'm sure they do, but they could be wrong. They could have just copied it from another tree. So you want to get into the records and you want to verify everything for yourself and make sure that your tree is as pure and beautiful as it can be. Okay, so in the beginning we were talking about these colors, and one of the things that I decided to do was to modify my own coloring groups. I wanted it to be reflective of the couples instead of an individual line. I found it easier as I was working with different cousin matches to use the couple as a color and then split it off later. So if you want to edit what you've already done, you could come over to any of your cousin matches and click the edit button, and you could add them to a new group, or you could remove them from this group. And alternatively, if you are creating a new group, just somebody that hasn't been added to a group, you could click add to group. Either way, you can edit and or change these groups right from here. So here, when you click on that button, you get this screen, and this is a new little pop out on the side, which I kind of like. So you can edit the colors right from here if you wanted to. And when you do click on that little pencil icon, you can change the name. You could change it. This says this is group 7 of 24. This is the 24 colors that they have. And when you click on this, you can see the colors that are already taken with a line through it. The one that's current is the check box, but you could click on a different color that's open and change it. You can delete the group, but if you delete the group, then anybody that was assigned to this group will be removed from that group. Now you can also create a new custom group up here. And now it's picking up because I had 7 groups already created. It is now calling this one group 8 of 24. You can give it a new name. You can, again, pick a color and hit save when you're done. The next step that you would want to take is to start doing descendancy research. And this is where ThruLines can come into play, which is a whole other conversation. Remember that ThruLines is built on the trees of other people. And so it's only as good as those trees. But from here, you could actually start creating a descendants tree. And from that, you will be able to find other DNA matches as they start to fall into the family tree. And you will start to see your ThruLines build out more. Word of caution, please stop trying to correct ThruLines. It is a hint feature. It is not designed to actually build your tree for you. It is designed to give you clues. So as you build your tree and you start to add some of your ancestors and cousins to your tree, you will start to see more DNA cousins get added to the ThruLines view. And so just keep that in mind as you build your tree, that you will probably capture more DNA cousins starting to appear in your tree as you start to build this out. This is a whole other subject, but this would be your last step, is to start doing some descendancy research to really kind of flush out the whole tree. And this, along with traditional genealogy research, is how you are going to break down some of those brick walls. Okay, so we're going to just kind of recap real quickly. So the steps for grouping these DNA matches is to decide on your color scheme and then look for the best known match that you know who they are and give them a color. Then you're going to look at the shared matches for that best known match and give them the same color because they're in the same group. They all have the same descendants with you. Then you're going to filter your whole cousin match list to the group that you are focused on. This is where you're creating that target that you're researching, and you're going to group your DNA matches to just those and start researching their trees for clues and for records. Then you're going to do some descendancy research, and you can use the aid of ThruLines to do that, or you can just manually do it the traditional genealogical way in your regular tree. So just to recap on the colors, if you want to use these colors, these are available to the channel members. I've got all 3 of these charts in for the channel members, And so what you can then do then is take all of those cousin matches with targeted research and group them down to the specific branch that you are focused on and make your life a whole lot easier than getting overwhelmed with all of those cousin matches. And so we go from our unknown ancestors, where we're really trying to figure out who they are, and we can, by searching other people's trees in that target group, we can find out who our ancestors are. I promise you, when you start learning to target the ancestors that you want to learn more about, you use your DNA cousins to group to that target, and you research the trees of those DNA cousins for clues and records, and you go through the verification process, then you will start breaking down your brick walls over and over again. I hope that was helpful. All right, so I promised you more information about the channel members. You have to be part of the information access level channel membership. If you want to learn more about channel membership, hit the join button below the video on the YouTube channel, and you can learn all about it. And well, there are more videos on the screen for you now that might be helpful. One is more about cousin matches.